Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. After a 2-year delay, the US aerospace giant GE has finally delivered the first of the 99 F404 engines to Hindustan Aeronautics Limited HAL for the Tejas light combat aircraft fighter jets. The delays have in turn affected the deliveries of 83 Tejas jets, a fact that has been lamented by the Air Force Chief Marshal A.P. Singh on several occasions in the past. Well, the deal for the 99 F404 engines is valued at $716 million US. This includes the cost of the engine as well as logistics, technical assistance and support equipment. According to reports, 12 engines were expected to be delivered in 2025. Subsequently, 20 engines are likely to be supplied annually from 2026 onwards. So let's start off this conversation. Finally, that the F404 engines are here to charge up the indigenously made Tejas fighter jets. What is it that is going to be brought to the table for the Indian Air Forces to be at their utmost ability to ward off challenges in the air, in the atmosphere against our enemies? I have with me Air Vice Marshal P.K. Srivastava. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me. And the first question about finally, after a 2-year delay, remember this deal had been signed in 2021. The idea is to provide in total 99 of those F404 engines to the HAL, which is then going to deliver the jets, the fighter jets, the Tejas light combat aircraft to the Indian Air Force. The idea is to phase out the MiG-21s and then the MiG-29s and the Mirages, and they be replaced by the Tejas indigenous fighter jets. Do you think this delay of 2 years is going to upend the strategy that has been laid out by the Indian Air Force in equipping itself with the best of the technology and fighter jets?
Megha, I can only say Der Aaye Durust Aaye has been something in waiting for a very long time, and GE has been able to set up as engine manufacturing facility for this class of engines. They had to redo it and they have done it. What, if you really ask me, I may not be very charged up at this moment. It's a good beginning, that I would say, is because their production rate which they have declared is not in match with what is the output or commitment given by HAL to the Indian Air Force. HAL is going to set up, now they have 2 lines and they want to set up 3rd and 4th line at Nasir, and they want to have a rate of 8, each line 8 aircraft per annum. So that would count to 32 aircraft per annum in case it gets going. And the rate with which maximum G is going to deliver as of now is not greater than 20 engines per annum. So how are these going to play out? Will they be able to enhance their production capacity in time for HL to meet its committed production rate? That is something to be seen. But I think it needs to be further discussed, and they need to match up with whatever commitment HAL has done to Indian Air Force. And as you asked a very right question, there has been a concern expressed by the Chief of Air Staff, which is a very valid concern if you see the current status of squadrons, fighter squadrons, which are now dwindling. And we have been promising year after year. This is not the first time we are coming on the show and debating about it. It's been going on for last at least a decade in various terms and expectations. So we would say that something has begun. It's a good beginning, but it has to be ramped up. It has to be ramped up so that we have our deficiency filled in better. Mark II is further going to come up. And if Mark II comes up, then we'll need better engines, modified engines, and we need to go ahead further. And that we again from GE. GE has given us 2 variants as of now. They are promising to give us. The second variant is coming. we are going to have 414 also. So I think G and HL need to talk to each other and put this engine game on some track. Otherwise, we'll still fall short of our promises, and Indian Air Force will be kept waiting. I shouldn't say that on a national television, but it's been waiting for a long time, and that's why
Yeah.
that coming from the Chief of Air Staff.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's an interesting point that you make, Air Vice Marshal Srivastav, and I'm going to carry forward with that conversation with Major General G. Dwivedi. The fact that there is an agreement that has been signed between GE and HAL, that there is going to be the F414 engines that are then going to be made in India. They are actually going to be manufactured here, and this is the first time that such an initiative is going to be taken. Do you see the timeline of it in the future shortening now that the processes have finally started?
Well, Megha, first and foremost, before I come to your specific point, I think the kind of you know delay that has taken place vis-a-vis F404 engine actually tells the story about India's defense preparedness. I think as a whole, we need to give a new push to the accelerated modernization of a program, because as Chief rightly mentioned, that there is a lack of seriousness. There is always, what he said was "chalta hai" approach. Well, that needs to be modified. That needs to be actually given a new lease. Second point is, now you specifically talked about the G414 engine, which is going to power our Tejas Mark II and later on AMCA, fifth generation fighter. Here, once again, there is I think, bit of glitch, because GE has only agreed to transfer 80% of the technology, and whereas I think we are not satisfied, because that 20% vacuum or a gap will be very critical, because that shows that we will be totally dependent at the mercy of GE and what exactly has happened with the G404 engine, because the contracts were signed in 2021. The first engine is arriving only yesterday. 11 are supposed to come, and thereon one doesn't know whether they'll be able to keep pace. Now, 3 points are very important. Firstly, let's take the fifth generation fighter, AMCA. This program was launched almost at the same time with the South Korean, the same project of fifth generation aircraft, and also Turkey. Well, both the countries, their prototypes are already there, whereas AMCA is expected to make a maiden flight in 2028. The point I am trying to bring out is that we need to accelerate our approach, both as a mindset and also on the ground. The second point is that self-reliance and operational efficiency, they need to go hand in hand. Operational efficiency cannot be compromised just on the self-reliance, and that's what most of the time our organization like HAL, DRDO, they bite more than they can chew, and that's what we have to keep in mind, that where we need operational efficiency, we need to import, and where we can't, well, we can substitute. So all I can say is that it's a good beginning, comes as a great relief,
Okay.
but we heavy up our whole process of acquisition, manufacturing, and the long time lag that takes place in signing the agreements, which also was brought out lately by CDS, that this loop needs to be curtailed. And I think as a nation, we need to put our defense priorities on the highest platform,
Okay.
and delays cannot be accepted, because they tell upon the operational efficiency. Megha.
Okay, all right. Major General Sanjay Meston also on the show with me, and General Meston, the point that was raised by General Dwivedi, that this chalta hai attitude has to be let go of. But when you're dealing with top-notch companies and aerospace organizations like GE, which is an American company, you would not expect such delays to happen. So is this an attitude that we have imbibed in ourselves for the last decades, so many decades, that it's easier for countries like America and France to then carry forward with this quote unquote chalta hai attitude. How do we fix this when one of the biggest aerospace company across the globe signs a deal with India, signs a deal with HAL, and is not able to make good on its commitment to provide the engines, and it is not a 1 month, 6 month delay, it is a delay of 2 long years. So and it is attributed to the fact that their systems were shut off because they did not have enough orders, and once they received the orders was when the entire cycle resumed, and which led to this 2-year delay. Should we buy it, or are we at this point of time can't do really anything much about it? So whatever is coming our way at whatever time period is something that we have to be acceptable.
Megha, good evening. Pertinent issues raised by you. See, the fact of the matter is that whenever such kind of procurement takes place, we have to see certain important factors. One is, whenever the contract was signed, the first batch of 10 GE F404 engines came in way back in 2004. And that is how today we have, Mark 1. 2 squadrons already functional, that is squadron number 45, which calls themselves as the flying daggers, and the 18 squadron, which calls themselves as the flying bullet. So what I am trying to highlight is, there are certain factors. So one factor is the consideration of the engine. Now, when this deal was signed way back in in 2004, apparently since then, till date, and the last deal was signed, I think, in 2021. The fact of the matter is there has been constant upgradation in engines. I'll just give you a small example. You look when we got the Maruti car, and you see what's happened today in the Indian car market. We have the latest and the best of cars. So technology is something which keeps upgrading, not only 6 months, not only each year. It is practically every 6 months there is upgradation. So first and when we formulate the general staff qualitative requirement, I think we have to be very clear as users, as consumers, that what is our requirement, and we have to study the market ahead. What are the trends? What is at present? What are the cost factor now? What will be the cost factor after escalation? Because there are 2 sides to this party. One is obviously the user or the consumer, and the other is the producer, in this case the GE. So both sides have to sit down. The things have to be ironed out very, very clearly, and once decided, thereafter upgradation should not be done, or even if it is to be done, then those have to be factored, and then the time frame has to be factored into.
Okay.
This delay was apparently there for a few years. I think the production line was also closed down, because the production will only be there once there is a firm demand. So there has been some mismatch between the consumer or the user and also the producer. So that is point 1. So we have to be very clear what is available on market and what do we require. So this is, I think, the overall thing. So we have to be futuristic in these kind of decisions and procurement, because technology keeps changing, and therefore the cost factor is another important aspect. Like today, President Trump has even offered F-35s to maybe India, and I think the way things are going on, so we have to now consider certain factors. Firstly, there is a shortfall criticality of fighter aircraft. You are aware we have 30 squadrons, 42.5 is what is required. It is something at the 1965 level. AWACS, again we have problem. We have just 6 AWACS. I think 2 of them are indigenous Netra, and the balance are 4 IL-76 based Falcon, and same as whether air-to-air refueler. So what I'm trying to say is the Indian Air Force is a package of these 3 aspects, and all these 3 have to be addressed. Sometimes what happens, we focus on one, the other gets negated, because AWACS is equally important. Mid-air to air refueling is very, very important. So all these factors have to be kept in mind. And unfortunately, what happens? Another thing, I can be very upfront about it. See, our officers come on posting to Delhi for 3 years tenure, 2 years tenure, and then we move out. So continuity. So I think a team has to be formulated, maybe with some very senior officers who have got at least 10 years to retire. That is very, very important factor, because then there's continuity. Otherwise, people keep moving out on transfer, posting, and so therefore the previous knowledge is all lost out, or the contacts which we have developed over a period of time, that phases out. So this is another important factor to be considered. So what I'm trying to say is a whole package has to be thought of, Megha. Number two, like now point brought out about GE F414 engines. Again, why today we have to go for these engines abroad? Why can't India start manufacturing? Yes, the whole problem is we are the second largest manufacturer of steel, but today we have to have the finest metallurgy. After all, the thrust, the weight to power ratio, the thrust ratio is a very, very important factor. So higher the thrust, so the heating up of the engines take place, the metallurgy. So today India has to start thinking of having indigenous production of highest metallurgy, because then we can be self-dependent and self-reliant.
Okay, I was coming to that. I was coming to that point, and therefore I wanted to draw a difference. Air Vice Marshal P.V. Srivastav, the fact that GE has offered transfer of technology and assembly lines to be set up in India for the GE F404, and moving a giant step ahead with the F414s, that 80% of the technology, the building, the actual manufacturing of the engine will for the first time happen in India at HAL. There have been similar deals that have been cut between India and earlier erstwhile Soviet Union, and then subsequently Russia as well, when we were able to buy from them, purchase from them the MiG-21s and the MiG-29s as well. There was similar transfer of technology and assembly lines set up over here in India. What do you think is the difference between the potential deal that has been struck between India and GE with regards to the actual engine being now fully manufactured here in our country?
So Megha, if you really see the engines market, so engines market is dominated by three major players. One is that Safran M88, for which we have the overall capacity, and we take the competency grade of Indian Air Force and the NHL, including our partners in the private sector. I'm counting on now on TSL also, because they'll be into aeroframes and fuselage, etc. They can make airframes. So basically, if you look at it, the current level of absorption of technology by Indian, the industrial base is better than what it was when we started in 2004. And that time we were attempting with the Kaveri. Kaveri has not been successful, but it has given rise to a lot of such people who can do the job given the technology. There's always a problem with high temperature components or parts of the aero engine. There's always a problem, because the problem first is in capital expenditure versus the numbers you are required to make, and the prices don't match up. This is the major problem, and this causes further problem in I would say dissemination of technology in the private sector. We have got two things going now on the right trajectory. One is that we have invited private sector to participate in bigger ways than what we are doing earlier. So that is a very good beginning, and I would say that's a very good thing which has happened, and it's been happening for last few years, maybe for last about a decade or so. And I have watched it myself. We also have the capability within the Indian Air Force and in HAL to overhaul engines of French origin, Russian origin, and American origin is coming up now. So we'll be able to better absorb the technology, whether it's Western or Russian. Russian technology, let me just give a broad-based comparison, is raw, is powerful, but when it comes to stealth, when it comes to thermal signature, when it comes to radar signature, it falls short. And when it comes to thrust versus weight, it falls short. So basically, the Tejas design was done, and the design compatible engine was G. So this is not the moment to question. They are fused together, because engine and airframe are fused together. Now they cannot be divorced. So we have to accept one fact, that we have to get along with GE for Tejas, as long as it may take, or convince them and get into the go. So from that perspective, if you look at it, their offering that will come and make aero engines here at final assembly level at 80% of technology transfer. 80% of technology transfer on the face of it may look nicer also, but 20% carries the, what I say, the oxygen pipeline for production. They can always put that, and that supply is very critical, because 80% would also include a lot of other things which may mostly end up at higher level of production, where we say, okay, you get the major assembly and you put them together and make the engine, test them out, fly them out, and then after that they become part of the aircraft. So essentially what we mean, this is a good beginning, the offer is good, but we need to negotiate a lot to get the technology in the real sense to our partners, Indian partners. Now there are many Indian partners, including L&T, TSL, Mahindra, so many other people. And then there is WEM Technologies in Hyderabad, the smaller players, the Alpha Tocol is there. So many other people are trying to participate in the whole venture. That's a very good beginning.
Okay.
Taking it from here, if you asking your question is very valid question. Is it the right marriage? Can we go forward in that or not? Will it happen or not? I'm hopeful. GE didn't have its plan going on for 2 years. The apparent reason was they gave what to us and others, that there's a COVID kind of manifestation. But I think it was because of numbers. Now they got the numbers. We already have 180 aircraft to be manufactured. That will be there. That we have to do. So we'll get as many engines plus some spare engines.
Okay,
so there's
all right.
enough demand, and they can go through.
Okay, all right. Let's also get into the conversation. Wing Commander S. Sudhakaran, who's joined just now, Commander Sudhakaran, about the capability and the capacity of the Tejas light combat aircraft that are now going to be equipped with the GEF 404 engines. How do you compare their performance to the 5th generation stealth jets that are available and are flying on the skies in our northern borders, and they are also being provided, sold to Pakistan by the Chinese, and where do we stand here?
Good evening, Megha. I don't think an engine comparing with the platform is the right comparison to make, because right now the Tejas has been configured for the GE 404 IN-20 in the view of the Kaveri engine having not been stepped up or having not being able to power this platform. But how does the Tejas compare with a 5th generation platform? Of course, it is not a 5th generation platform, right? There are challenges. That's why we have the AMCA program in place. But having said that, I have been continuously telling that by the time the AMCA program is going to see the light of the day, the world is already going to see the operationalization of advanced 6th generation aircrafts. China has already the Chengdu 20 and the other one, don't remember the name offhand, they have already demonstrated its capability. We can very well say whether they have it or not. But there is a problem here. What if they have? That is the question that we need to address. If they don't have it, fine, you are in a good wicket. But what if they have? And that is the question. You can't run away by simply saying that China is known to, talk about 10 things more than what they have. The Americans have got ruffled. That is why they have announced the 6th generation fighter aircraft in the open. And we are now talking about comparing with the 5th generation platform. This air warfare game is actually going into an exponential trajectory. That is powered by the AI revolution that is happening. One of the challenges that we are going to address in the near future is the cockpit vacancies are going to go to a zero, because the problem with the sub 6th generation was it was all cockpit dictated. We are today talking about concepts like loyal wingman. But there is going to be a time wherein the cockpits will have no humans, which means these fighter planes will be able to do maneuvers which are beyond the capability of a human being to undertake, which means they are going to pretty much operate, at par, shoulder to what a missile does today. That is the kind of challenge that we face today, and air supremacy was key to achieving, edge in any war till 10 or 20 years back. But we are increasingly moving towards intelligence supremacy as the key factor which will dictate all forms of warfare, be it land, sea or air. Air supremacy will be dictated by your ability to reign in the intelligence domain. And that, when I'm talking about, is the machine intelligence domain. This is where India needs to pay heed. While drafting the technology vision document, I was very candid to tell a lot of people who objected to it, but the first force that will get hit because of this AI revolution is the Air Force. And that we need to get it straight. Because a combat at zero human loss in sky means no longer we will have an Abhinav Vartman kind of a situation wherein your pilot landed into the enemy territory. If there are no human beings on the cockpit, then somebody like a China will not hesitate to attack you day in and day out.
Yeah, but I think that's a long way to go, keeping in mind that we have been able to finally get the engines after a 2-year delay.
Madam, I would like to add something here.
At this point of time, as you spoke about how there is the sixth generation stealth engines, the fighter jets that are being built. It remains to be a long dream, a long ambition for the country. The fact that how are we going to actually shorten the gap is the question that we are wanting to reflect and wanting to answer as well.
To cut you here, we have to understand the next generation of designs are going to come from the womb of machines. If it took 20 years for you to develop a fighter platform 10 years before, it is not going to take you 2 years. The reason why it is going to take you more is because of the human in the cockpit. If, missiles don't take that longer to build. The moment the human in the cockpit is taken out and the brain is replaced by a machine. Yes, I understand your point,
and let's hope and then assume and then obviously have our Indian Armed Forces, the Indian Air Force, the technology giants within our country working on this technology to allow for us to jumpstart and be in the reign where we can fight out the Chinese and the Americans in this arms race, in this fighter jets race, and allow for real artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics to take over to ensure that we are at the same league as our global competitors. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX. Okay, we are getting to know